Hey guys, it's reading day, and today's book is Bram Stoker's Dracula. We'll be right back. Grab your popcorn and snacks. Find a comfy spot, take a seat or lie down, and let me transport you to a place of fantasy, ghost stories, ancient legends, odd creatures, alien encounters, and other magical topics. You may even decide to join the conversation. From faraway lands to your own backyard, with a small dash of pixie dust, turn out the lights and open your minds. The journey is about to begin. There we go. Hey everybody, welcome to the show. My name is Charlotte. Give me a second here. The book has moved. It should have moved because I had it set up, so let me get this started real quick. I don't know where we're at, so I don't understand why it's doing this. So hang on. We got issues. There we go. Okay, this is where I'm supposed to be. Okay. So hopefully it stays there and doesn't move. Okay, everybody, welcome. Let me set up TikTok here real quick, and we'll get the show going here because I am going to be broadcasting on TikTok tonight. So give me a minute to get everything set up that I need. Oops, wrong button. See, I'm not having a good day. Already I'm hitting every button but what I want. Why is it doing that? There I am. It's going to be one of those days. Okay, now we got the right buttons. Okay, now we get started. Sorry about that. All right, here we go. Give me a second. Hey everybody, my name is Charlotte. I'm going to be your host today. How's everybody doing? It's Sunday, and some of your necks of the woods, it's already tomorrow being Monday, but where I'm from in California, it is Sunday. Anyway, I want to welcome you all, and today we are broadcasting on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and TikTok. So welcome TikTok people. I'm really appreciative of you coming. We do this every Sunday. I read from a paranormal themed book. And this is the 9th day reading out of Bram Stoker's Dracula. What a great book. I didn't know this guy, that he was, I mean, he's a great writer, obviously, the classics, but he, it's just the way he's written it. It's just a really, really wonderful book. For you guys over on TikTok, I am on a headset. I'm on my generic AirPods. Haven't used them in a while. Couldn't find my regular setup. You hear a thing in the background, that's the air conditioner. It's 105 degrees outside, and there's no way I'm turning the AC off to do TikTok. It sounded okay earlier when I did some tests, so we'll see. Let me know how the live sounds for you guys. You guys over on the other channels, you're cool, right? I can't see your messages because it is on my iPhone, so they're like little itty bitties, and you can see I wear bottle cap glasses. Okay, well, welcome everybody. Again, my name is Charlotte. I'm going to be your host for the next hour. Welcome to my Boo Crew. Okay, this is how we're putting our Boo Crew together. My Boo Crew's over at TikTok. I do a show Sunday through Friday. It's paranormal themed. Sometimes it's not paranormal topics. The majority of the time it is. You can find that show 6:30 p.m. Pacific every Monday, youtube.com/@California Haunts Radio. And this is the only show because, I don't have the capability of putting TikTok up on my computer yet. So this is the only show I can do with TikTok because it's reading from a book, just to let you guys know. Every Sunday I read from a paranormal themed book. It might be a true story. It might be something that's made up that's fantasy, like what we're reading. Well, who knows if tonight's not true? It's all legendary stuff, right? From Transylvania. Hello, Marisa. Okay, so who knows if it's not true? Okay, but it's always some paranormal themed book every Sunday. And I also, excuse me, I also will read during the week, like if a guest, has to quit at some point. How do I get this thing off? How do I get this thing off? Okay. If a guest, can't make it at some point, then I also read. So far, I've read for 9 days. We usually read 2 chapters a day. And so just to give you an idea, I try to read for an hour, but sometimes it does go over because these chapters are longer than you expect them to be. So this might go on for longer than an hour. But Bram Stoker's Dracula was written in the mid to early 1800s. And so I'm going to put a warning out everywhere to Facebook, to you guys, everywhere to say that sometimes it's not politically correct. Okay? I'll try and catch the stuff as I'm reading it, but sometimes I don't. So just so you know that, don't turn me into the TikTok police. Don't turn me into Facebook police or any of the internet police. I'm doing the best I can reading through this stuff. Okay? Luckily, there's not a lot of foreign languages in here either. So I want to thank you all for coming. About 2 minutes, I will start reading. Like I said, I try to read for about an hour each time I read, but it does go over from time to time. Okay? And also TikTok. I do have a live goal up there of corgis, and you're not required to donate anything like that. It's just extra for me to keep my show going on all my platforms. That would be great, just to make a little extra today. I'd really appreciate it. Or roses or whatever. But you're not required to. I'm not asking for it straight out. I'm just saying totally up to you. Also, I do have subscriptions, and you can join my Boo Crew for, I think it's like, what, $5.50 a month to join my TikTok Boo Crew, which is going to be expanding over to my Patreon, becoming Boo Crew as well. Because again, I'm just trying to keep the show on the air, and I want to do more stuff. I'm going to be doing a lot of field investigations that I'll be doing on TikTok Live and over on Facebook and different places like that. I've been doing this for about a year and a half on TikTok, and just we're starting to get the ball rolling. Okay, so what I want you to do is, you guys didn't hear my intro because it was on the computer. Sit back, grab a sherry, do whatever you do, sit in front of the fire, cuddle up, and listen to Bram Stoker's Dracula. I think it's a really good book. So I will be reading. Every once in a while, I'll look up and acknowledge you guys. Like I have Marisa. Hey, Marisa is in my chat room right now. But remember, I'm also going for likes, so double tap that screen. If you like what you hear today with me reading the book, please double tap that screen and see if we can get 1,000 likes today. That would be really cool as well. Okay, so without further ado, Bram Stoker's Dracula. And I'm not a person that can read Roman numerals, so the chapter, I have a very old squeaky chair too. So the chapter is chapter XV. Just to let you guys know, who haven't been listening to this book, is it's written in the form of diaries. So there's like 5 main characters for Dracula, and there's diaries for each of the characters. So that's what I'll be reading, is going through these diaries, okay? So far, we've been to Dracula's castle, we met Dracula. Dracula's now in England, and he's starting to like wreak havoc all over England. In fact, Lucy, who we're going to mention in this chapter right here, she's already been taken in by Dracula and become one of his wives. I think that's what they call them, right? Dracula's wives. So she's already been taken in. So Professor Van Helsing is helping, and you've heard of him, obviously, for the movies. And there's another doctor that's a psychologist that is helping him as well. And Van Helsing has just let this doctor and Lucy's boyfriend or fiance know that Lucy has been turned into a vampire. Okay, so that's where we're at. So we're going to be, again, chapter XV, Dr. Seward's diary continued. And again, this is all written in diary format. Okay, all right. And again, please do not turn me into TikTok police or anybody else's police just because I missed something like on a live, I'll say murder, blah, 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 like that. I'm trying to do my best to sort through this stuff for you guys and keep it as politically correct as possible. I'm not using my regular headset. I'm using my backup headset. Can't find my regular headset. Again, I don't know how good the audio is. I hope it's okay. I've been doing tests on different shorts and stuff that I've been putting on TikTok today with it. It seemed all right. But that noise is my air conditioning in the background. And like I said, it's extremely hot today. All right. I will try to read till 7:12 Pacific today, and we'll see how long it lasts. All right, chapter XV, Dr. Seward's diary continues. For a while, true anger mastered me. It was as if he had, during her life, struck Lucy on the face. I smote the table hard and rose up as I said to him, Dr. Van Helsing, are you mad? He raised his head and looked at me, and somehow the tenderness of his face calmed me at once. Would I were, he said. Madness would be easy to bear compared with a truth like this. Oh, my friend, why, think you, did I go so far round? Why take so long to tell you so simple a thing? Was it because I hate you and have hated you all my life? Was it because I wished to give you pain? Was it that I wanted now so late revenge for that time when you saved my life and from a fearful death? Huh, ah, no. Forgive me, said I, he went on. My friend, it was because I wished to be gentle in the breaking to you, for I know you have loved that so sweet lady. But even yet, I do not expect you to believe. It's so hard to accept at once any abstract truth that we may doubt to be possible. We have always believed that the know of it. It is more hard still to accept so sad a concrete truth, and of such a one as Miss Lucy. Tonight, I go to prove it. Dare you come with me? This staggered me. A man does not like to prove such a truth. Byron accepted from the category, jealousy. And prove the very truth he must abhorred. He saw my hesitation and spoke. The logic is simple. No madman's logic this time. Jumping from tussock to tussock in a misty bog. If it be not true, then proof will be relief. At worst, it will not harm. If it be true, there is the dread. Yet very dread should help my cause. For in it is some need of belief. Come, I tell you what I propose. First, that we go off now and see the child in the hospital. Dr. Vincent of the North Hospital, where the papers say a child is friend of mine, and I think of yours since you were in class in Amsterdam. He will let 2 scientists see his case, if he will not let 2 friends. We shall tell him nothing, but only that we wish to learn. And then, he took a key from his pocket and held it up. And then we spend the night, you and I, in the churchyard where Lucy lies. This is the key that locks the tomb. I had it from Coffin Man to give it to Arthur. My heart sank within me, for I felt that there was some fearful ordeal before us. I could do nothing, however. So I plucked up what heart I could and said that we had better hasten, as the afternoon was passing. We found the child awake. It had had a sleep and taken some food, and altogether was going on well. Dr. Vincent took the bandage from its throat and showed us the punctures. There was no mistaking the similarity to those which had been on Lucy's throat. They were smaller, and the edges looked fresher. That was all. We asked Vincent to what he attributed them, and he replied that it must have been a bite of some animal, perhaps a rat. But, for his own part, he was inclined to think that it was one of the bats, which are so numerous in the northern heights of London. Out of so many harmless ones, he said, there may be some wild specimen from the south of a more malignant species. Some sailor may have brought one home, and it managed to escape, or even from the zoological gardens. A young one may have gotten loose, or one be bred there from a vampire. These things do occur, you know. Only 10 days ago a wolf got out, and was, I believe, traced up in this direction. For a week after, the children were playing nothing but Red Riding Hood on the heath and in every alley in the place until this Bloofer lady scare came along. Since then it has been quite a gala time with them. Even this poor little mite, when he woke up today, asked the nurse if he might go away. When she asked him why he wanted to go, he said he wanted to play with the Bloofer lady. I hope, said Van Helsing, that when you are sending the child home, you will caution its parents to keep strict watch over it. These fancies to stray are most dangerous, and if the child were to remain out another night, it would probably be fatal. But in any case, I suppose, you will not let it away for some days. Certainly not. Not for a week at least. Longer if the wound is not healed. Our visit to the hospital took more time than we had reckoned, and the sun had dipped before we came out. When Van Helsing saw how dark it was, he said, "There is no hurry. It is more late than I thought. Come, let us seek somewhere that we may eat, and then we'll go on our way." We dined at Jack Straw's castle, along with a little crowd of bicyclists, and others who were genial and noisy. About 10 o'clock we started from the inn. It was then very dark, and the scattered lamps made the darkness greater when we were once outside their individual radius. The professor had evidently noted the road we were to go to, for he went on without hesitation. But, as for me, I was in quite a mix-up as to locality. As we went further, we met fewer and fewer people, till at last we were somewhat surprised when we met even the patrol of horse police going their usual suburban round. At last we reached the wall of the churchyard, which we climbed over, with some little difficulty, for it was very dark, and the whole place seemed so strange to us. We found the western tomb. The professor took the key, opened the creaky door. Oh, sound effect. There you go. Open the creaky door. Couldn't resist. And standing back, politely, but quite unconsciously, motioned me to precede him. There was a delicious irony in the offer, and the courtliness of giving preference on such a ghastly occasion. My companion followed me quickly, and cautiously drew the door to. After carefully, there was the door, ascertaining that the lock was falling, and not a spring, one. In the latter case, we should have been in a bad plight. Then he fumbled in his bag, and taking out a matchbox and a piece of candle, proceeded to make a light. The tomb, in the daytime, and when wreathed with fresh flowers, had looked grim and gruesome enough. But now, some days afterwards, when the flowers hung lank and dead, their whites turning to rust and their greens to browns, when the spider and the beetle had resumed their accustomed dominance, when time discolored stone and dust encrusted mortar, and rusty dank iron and tarnished brass and clouded silver plating gave back the feeble glimmer of the candle, the effect was more miserable and sordid than could have been imagined. It conveyed irresistibly the idea that life, animal life, was not the only thing which could pass away. Van Helsing went about his work systematically, holding his candle so that he could read the coffin plates, and so holding it that the sperm dropped in white patches which congealed as they touched the metal. He made assurance of Lucy's coffin. Another search in his bag, and he took out a turn screw. "What are you going to do?" I asked. "To open the coffin. You shall be convinced." Straight away he began taking out the screws, and finally lifted off the lid, showing the casing of lead beneath. The sight was almost too much for me. It seemed to be as much an affront to the dead as it would have been to have stripped off her clothing in her sleep whilst living. I actually took hold of his hand to stop him. He only said, "You shall see," and again, fumbling in his bag, took out a tiny fret saw, striking the turn screw through the lead with a swift downward stab, which made me wince. He made a small hole, which was, however, big enough to admit the point of the saw. I had expected a rush of gas from the weak old corpse. We doctors, who have had to study our dangers, have to become accustomed to such things, and I drew back towards the door. But the professor never stopped for a moment. He sawed down a couple of feet along one side of the lead coffin, and then across and down the other side, taking the edge of the loose flange. He bent it back towards the foot of the coffin, and holding up the candle into the aperture, motioned to me to look. I drew near and looked. The coffin was empty. It was certainly a surprise to me, and gave me a considerable shock, but Van Helsing was unmoved. He was now more sure than ever of his ground, and so emboldened to proceed his task. "Are you satisfied now, friend John?" he asked. I felt all the dogged argumentativeness of my nature awake within me, as I answered him. "I am satisfied that Lucy's body is not in that coffin, but that only proves one thing." "And what is that, friend John?" "That it's not there." "That's good logic," he said, "so far as it goes. But how can you account for it not being there?" "Perhaps a body snatcher," I suggested. Some of the undertaker's people may have stolen it." I felt that I was speaking folly, and yet it was the only real cause which I could suggest. The professor sighed. "Ah, well," he said, "we must have more proof. Come with me." He put the coffin lid. He put on the coffin lid again, gathered up all his things, and placed them in a bag. Blew out the light and placed the candle also in the bag. We opened the door and went out. Behind us, he closed the door and locked it. He handed me the key, saying, "Will you keep it? You had better be assured." I laughed. It was not a very cheerful laugh, I am bound to say, as I motioned him to keep it. "A key is nothing," I said. "There may be duplicates, and anyhow, it's not that difficult to pick the lock of that kind." He said nothing, but put the key in his pocket. Then he told me to watch at one side of the churchyard, whilst he would watch the other. I took up my place behind a yew tree, and I saw his dark figure move until the intervening headstones and trees hid it from my sight. It was a lonely vigil. Just after I had taken my place, I heard a distant clock strike 12, and in time, 1 and 2. I was chilled and unnerved, and angry with the professor for taking me on such an errand, and with myself for coming. I was too cold and too sleepy to be keenly observant, and not sleepy enough to betray my trust, so altogether I had a dreary, miserable time. Suddenly, as I turned round, I thought I saw something like a white streak, moving between two dark yew trees at the side of the churchyard, farthest from the tomb. At the same time, a dark mass moved from the professor's side to the ground and hurriedly went towards it. Then I too moved, but I had to go round the headstones and railed off tombs, and I stumbled over graves. The sky was overcast, and somewhere far off an early cock crew. A little way off, beyond a line of scattered juniper trees, which marked the pathway to the church, a white, dim figure flitted in the direction of the tomb. The tomb itself was hidden by trees, and I could not see where the figure disappeared. I heard the rustle of actual movement where I had first seen the white figure, and, coming over, found the professor holding in his arms a tiny child. When he saw me, he held it out to me and said, "Are you satisfied now?" "No," I said, in a way that I felt was aggressive. "Do you not see the child?" "Yes, it is a child. But who brought it here, and is it wounded?" I asked. "We shall see," said the professor. And with one impulse we took our way out of the churchyard, he carrying the sleeping child. When we had got some little distance away, we went into a clump of trees and struck a match and looked at the child's throat. It was without a scratch or scar of any kind. "Was I right?" I asked triumphantly. "We were just in time," said the professor, thankfully. We had now to decide what we were to do with the child, and so consulted about it. If we were to take it to the police station, we should have to give some account of our movements during the night. At least, we should have had to make some statement as to how we had come to find the child. So finally, we decided that we would take it to the heath, and when we heard a policeman coming, would leave it where he could not fail to find it. We would then seek our way home as quickly as we could. All fell out well. At the edge of Hempstead Heath, we heard a policeman's heavy tramp, and laying the child on the pathway, we waited and watched until he saw it as he flashed his lantern to and fro. We heard his exclamation of astonishment, and then we went away silently. By good chance, we got a cab near the Spaniards and drove to town. I can't sleep, so I make this entry, but I must try to get a few hours' sleep, as Van Helsing is to call for me at noon. He insists that I shall go with him on another expedition. If you like what you hear, double tap that screen. Double tap that screen. Facebook, everybody, give me a thumbs up, happy heart, all that good stuff. But double tap that screen. Quick drink of water. Water break. It is hot here. Okay. 27th September. It was 2 o'clock before we found a suitable opportunity for our attempt. The funeral, held at noon, was all completed, and the last stragglers of the mourners had taken themselves lazily away, when, looking carefully from behind a clump of olive trees, we saw the sexton lock the gate after him. We knew then that we were safe till morning, did we desire it. But the professor told me that we should not want more than an hour at most. Again I felt that horrid sense of the reality of things, in which any effort of imagination seemed out of place, and I realized distinctly the perils of the law which we were incurring in our unhallowed work. Besides, I felt it was also useless, outrageous, as it was to open a leaden coffin to see if a woman dead nearly a week were really dead. It now seemed the height of folly to open the tomb again, when we knew, from the evidence of our own eyesight, that the coffin was empty. I shrugged my shoulders, however, and rested silent, for Van Helsing had a way of going on his own road, no matter who remonstrated. He took the key, opened the vault, and again courteously motioned me to proceed. The place was not so gruesome as last night, but oh, how utterly mean-looking when the sunshine streamed in. Van Helsing walked over to Lucy's coffin, and I followed. He bent over and again forced back the leaden flange, and then a shock of surprise and dismay shot through me. There was Lucy. Seemingly just as we had seen her the night before her funeral. She was, if possible, more radiantly beautiful than ever, and I could not believe that she was unalive. The lips were red, nay, redder than before, and on the cheeks was a delicate bloom. "Is this a juggle?" I asked him. "Are you convinced now?" said the professor in response, and as he spoke, he put over his hand, and in a way that made me shudder, pulled back the dead lips and showed the white teeth. "See," he went on, "see, they're even sharper than before. With this, and he touched one of the canine teeth, that below it, the little children can be bitten. Are you of belief now, friend John?" Once more, argumentative hostility woke within me. I could not accept such an overwhelming idea as he suggested. So, with an attempt to argue, of which I was even, at the moment, ashamed, I said, "She may have been placed here since last night." "Indeed, that is so, and by whom?" I do not know. Someone has done it. And yet, she has been dead 1 week. Most people in that time would not look so. I had no answer for this, so was silent. Van Helsing did not seem to notice my silence. At any rate, he showed me neither chagrin or triumph. He was looking intently at the face of the dead woman. raising the eyelids and looking at the eyes, and once more opening the lips and examining the teeth. Then he turned to me and said, "Here, there is one thing which is different from all this recorded. Here is some dual life that is not as common. She was bitten by the vampire when she was in a trance, sleepwalking. Oh, you start. You did not know that, friend John, but you shall know it all later. And in trance, he best come to take more blood. In trance she died, and in trance she is undead, too. So it is that she differs from all others. Usually when the undead sleep at home." As he spoke, he made a comprehensive sweep of his arm to designate what to a vampire was home. "Their face show what they are. But this is so sweet. That was when she not undead, she go that was when she not undead, she go back to the nothings of the common dead. There is no malign here, see? And so it makes it hard that I must kill her in her sleep." This turned my blood cold, and it began to dawn upon me that I was accepting Van Helsing's theories. But if she were really dead, what was there of terror in the idea of killing her? He looked up at me and evidently saw the change in my face, for he said almost joyously, "Ah, you believe now." I answered, "Do not press me too hard all at once. I am willing to accept. How will you do this bloody work?" "I shall cut off her head and fill her mouth with garlic, and I shall drive a stake through her body." It made me shudder to think of so mutilating the body of the woman whom I had loved, and yet the feeling was not so strong as I had expected. I was, in fact, beginning to shudder at the presence of this being, this undead, as Van Helsing called it, and to loathe it. Is it possible that love is all subjective, or all objective? I waited a considerable time for Van Helsing to begin, but he stood as if wrapped in thought. Presently he closed the catch of his bag with a snap, and said, "I've been thinking, and have made up my mind as to what is best. If I did simply follow my inclining, I would do now, at this moment, what is to be done. But there are other things to follow, and things that are 1,000 times more difficult, and that them we do not know. This is simple. She have yet no life taken, though that is of time, and to act now would be to take danger from her forever. But then we might have to want Arthur, and how shall we tell him of this? If you saw the wounds on Lucy's throat, and saw the wounds so similar on the child's at the hospital, if you, who saw the coffin empty last night, and full today with a woman who have not changed only to be more rose and more beautiful in a whole week after she died, if you know of this, and you know of the white figure last night that brought the child to the churchyard, and yet, of your own senses, you did not believe, how then can I expect Arthur, who knows none of these things, to believe? Arthur is used to be her fiancé. He doubted me when I took him from her kiss when she was dying. I know he has forgiven me because in some mistaken idea I have done things that prevent him saying goodbye as he ought. And he may think that it's some more mistaken idea that this woman was buried alive. And that is the biggest mistake of all, and that we have killed her. He will then argue back that it is we, mistaken ones, that have killed her by our ideas. And so he will be much, much unhappy always. Yet, he never can be sure, and that is the worst of all. And he will sometimes think that the woman she loved was buried alive. And that will paint his dreams with horrors of what she must have suffered. And again, he will think that we may be right, and that his so beloved was, after all, an undead. No, I told him once, and since then I learned much. Now, since I know it's all true, 100,000 times more do I know that he must pass through the bitter waters to reach the sweet. He, poor fellow, must have 1 hour that will make the very face of heaven grow black to him. Then we can act for good all round and set him peace. My mind is made up. Let us go. You return home for tonight to your asylum, and see that all be well. As for me, I shall spend the night here in this churchyard in my own way. Tomorrow night, you will come to me to the Berkeley Hotel at 10 o'clock. I shall send for Arthur to come too, and also that so fine young man of America that gave us blood. Later, we shall all have work to do. I come with you so far as Piccadilly, and there dine, for I must be back here before the sun sets. So we locked the tomb, and came away, and got over the wall, of the churchyard, which was not much of a task, and drove back to Piccadilly. Note left by Van Helsing in his portmanteau. Berkeley Hotel, directed to John Seward, M.D. Not delivered. 27th September. Friend John. I write this in case anything should happen. I go alone to watch in that churchyard. It pleases me that the undead Miss Lucy shall not leave tonight, that so on the morrow night she may be more eager. Therefore I shall fix some things she like not, garlic and crucifixes, and so seal up the door of the tomb. She is young as undead, and will heed. Moreover, these are only to prevent her coming out. They may not prevail on her wanting to get in, for then the undead is desperate, and must find the line of least resistance, whatever it may be. I shall be at hand all night from sunset till after the sunrise, and if there be aught that may be learned, I shall learn it. For Miss Lucy, or from her, I have no fear. But that other, to whom is there that she is undead, he had now the power to seek her tomb and find shelter. He is cunning, as I know from Mr. Jonathan, and from the way that all along he had fooled us when he played with us for Miss Lucy. And we lost. And in many ways the undead are strong. He has always the strength in his hand of 20 men, even we 4 who gave our strength to Miss Lucy. It also is all of him. Besides, he can summon his wolf, and I know not what. So if it be that he comes thither on this night, he shall find me, but none other shall, until it be too late. But it may be that he will not attempt the place. There is no reason why he should. His hunting ground is more full of game than the churchyard where the undead woman sleep, and the one old man watch. Therefore, I write this just in case. Take the papers, that are with this, the diaries of Harker and the rest, and read them. And then find this great undead, and cut off his head, and burn his heart, or drive a stake through it, so that the world may rest from him. If it be so, farewell, Van Helsing. Dr. Sewald's Diary, 28th September. It is wonderful what a good night's sleep will do for one. Yesterday I was almost willing to accept Van Helsing's monstrous ideas, but now they seem to start out lurid before me as outrages on common sense. I have no doubt that he believes it all. I wonder if his mind could have become in any way unhinged. Surely there must be some rational explanation of all these mysterious things. Is it possible that the professor can't have done it himself? He is so abnormally clever that if he went off his head, he would carry out his intent with regard to some fixed idea in a wonderful way. I am loath to think it, and indeed, it would be almost as great as a marvel as the other to find out that Van Helsing was mad. But anyhow, I shall watch him carefully. I may get some light on the mystery. 29th September, morning. Last night, a little before 10 o'clock, Arthur and Quincy came into Van Helsing's room. He told us all that he wanted to do, but especially addressing himself to Arthur, as if all of our wills were centered in his. He began by saying that he hoped we would all come with him too, for, he said, there is a grave duty to be done there. You were doubtless surprised at my letter? This query was directly addressed to Lord Godalming. I was. It rather upset me for a bit. There's been so much trouble around my house of late that I could do without any more. I have been curious, too, as to what you mean. Quincy and I talked it over, but the more we talked, the more puzzled we got, till now I can say for myself that I'm about up a tree as to any meaning about anything. Me too, said Quincy Morris. Oh, said Professor. Then you are near the beginning, both of you. Then friend John here, who has to go a long way back before he can even get so far as to begin. It was evident that he recognized my return to my old doubting frame of mind without my saying a word. Then, turning to the other two, he said, with intense gravity, I want your permission to do what I think is good this night. It is, I know, much to ask. And when you know what it is I propose to do, you will know, and only then how much. Therefore, may I ask that you promise me in the dark, so that afterwards, though you may be angry with me for a time, I must not disguise from myself the possibility that such may be. You shall not blame yourselves for anything. That's frank anyhow, broke in Quincy. I'll answer for the professor. I don't quite see his drift, but I swear he's honest, and that's good enough for me. I thank you, sir, said Van Helsing. I have done myself the honor of counting you as one trusting friend, and such endorsement is dear to me. He held out a hand, which Quincy took. Then Arthur spoke out. Dr. Van Helsing, I don't quite like to buy a pig in a poke, as they say in Scotland, and if it be anything in which my honor as a gentleman or my faith as a Christian is concerned, I cannot make such promise. If you can assure me that what you intend does not violate either of these two, then I will give my consent at once, though for the life of me I cannot understand what you're driving at. I accept your limitations, said Van Helsing, and all I ask of you is that you feel it necessary to condemn any act of mine. Oh, that if you feel necessary, to condemn any act of mine, you will first consider it well and be satisfied that it does not violate your reservations. Agreed, said Arthur. That is only fair. And now that the purplers are over, may I ask what it is we are to do? I want you to come with me, and to come in secret to the churchyard at Kingston. Arthur's face fell, as he said in a amazed sort of way, where poor Lucy is buried? The professor bowed. Arthur went on. And when there, to enter the tomb, Arthur stood up. Professor, are you in earnest, or is it some monstrous joke? Pardon me, I see that you are in earnest. He sat down again, but I could see that he sat firmly and proudly, as one who was on his dignity. There was silence until he asked again, and when in the tomb? To open the coffin. This is too much, he said, and really rising again. I'm willing to be patient in all things that are reasonable, but in this desecration of the grave of one who... He fairly choked with indignation. The professor looked up pityingly at him. If I could spare you one pang, my poor friend, he said, God knows I would, but this night our feet must tread in thorny paths, or later, and forever. The feet you love must walk in paths of flame. Arthur looked up with a set white face and said, Take care, sir, take care. Would it not be well to hear what I have to say, said Van Helsing, and then you will at least know the limit of my purpose. Shall I go on? That's fair enough, broke in Morris. After a pause, Van Helsing went on, evidently with an effort. Miss Lucy is dead. Is it not so? Yes. Then there can be no wrong to her. But if she be not dead... Arthur jumped to his feet. Good God, he cried. What do you mean? Has there been any mistake? Has she been buried alive? He groaned in anguish that not even hope could soften. I didn't say she was alive, my child. I did not think it. I go no further than to say that she might be undead. Undead? Not alive? What do you mean? Is this all... It just flipped 2 pages on me. A nightmare, or what is it? There are mysteries which men can only guess at, which age by age they may solve only in part. Believe me, we are now on the verge of one, but I have not done. Okay. May I cut off the head of dead Miss Lucy? Heavens and earth, no, cried Arthur in a storm of passion. Not for the wide world will I consent to any mutilation of her dead body. Dr. Van Helsing, you try me too far. What have I done to you that you should torture me so? What did that poor sweet girl do that you should want to cast such dishonor on her grave? Are you mad to speak such things, or am I mad to listen to them? Don't you dare think more of such desecration. I shall not give my consent to anything you do. I have a duty to do in protecting her grave from outrage, and, by God, I'll do it. Van Helsing rose up from where he had all the time been seated and said, gravely and sternly, My lord, my lord, I too have a duty to do. A duty to others, a duty to you, a duty to the dead, and, by God, I'll do it. All I ask you now is that you come with me, that you look and listen, and if when later I make the same request, you do not be more eager for its fulfillment, even than I am, then I shall do my duty, whatever it may seem to be. And then, to follow your lordship's wishes, I shall hold myself at your disposal to render an account to you, when and where you will. His voice broke a little, and he went on with a voice of pity. But I beseech you, do not go forth in anger with me, in a long life of acts which were often not pleasant to do, and which sometimes did wring my heart. I have never had so heavy a task as now. Believe me, that if the time comes for you to change your mind towards me, one look from you will wipe away all this so sad hour. For I would do what a man can to save you from sorrow. Just think, for why should I give myself so much of labor and so much sorrow? I have come here from my own land to do what I can of good. At the first to please my friend John, and then to help a sweet young lady whom, too, I came to love. For her, I am ashamed to say so much, but I say it in kindness. I gave what you gave, the blood in my veins. I gave it. I, who was not, like you, her lover, but only her physician and her friend. I gave to her my nights and days, before death, after death. And if my death can do her good even now, when she is the dead undead, she shall have it freely. He said this with a very grave, sweet pride, and Arthur was much affected by it. He took the old man's hand and said in a broken voice, "Oh, it's hard to think of it, and I cannot understand, but at least I shall go with you and wait." Next chapter. Chapter XVI, Dr. Seward's diary continued. It was just a quarter before 12 o'clock when we got into the churchyard over the low wall. The night was dark, with occasional gleams of moonlight between the rents of the heavy clouds that scudded across the sky. We all kept somehow close together, with Van Helsing slightly in front as he led the way. When we had come close to the tomb, I looked well at Arthur, for I feared that the proximity to a place laden with so much sorrowful a memory would upset him. But he bore himself well. I took it that the very mystery of the proceeding was in some way a countering to his grief. The professor unlocked the door, and seeing a natural hesitation amongst us, for various reasons, solved the difficulty by entering first himself. The rest of us followed, and he closed the door. He then lit a dark lantern and pointed to the coffin. Arthur stepped forward, hesitating. Van Helsing said to me, "You were with me here yesterday. Was the body of Miss Lucy in that coffin?" "It was." The professor turned to the rest, saying, "You hear, and yet there is no one who does not believe me." He took his screwdriver and again took off the lid of the coffin. Arthur looked on, very pale but silent. When the lid was removed, he stepped forward. He evidently did not know that there was a leaden coffin, or, at any rate, had not thought of it. When he saw the rent in the lead, the blood rushed to his face for an instant, but as quickly as fell away again, so that he remained of a ghastly whiteness. He was still silent. Van Helsing forced back the leaden flang, and we all looked and recoiled. The coffin was empty. "She's on the move again, gang." For several minutes, no one spoke a word. The silence was broken by Quincy Morris. "Professor, I answered for you. Your word is all I want. I wouldn't ask such a thing ordinarily. I wouldn't do so to dishonor you, as to imply a doubt. But this is a mystery that goes beyond any honor or dishonor. Is this your doing? I swear to you, by all that I hold sacred, that I have not removed nor touched her. What happened was this. 2 nights ago, my friend Seward and I came here, with good purpose, believe me. I opened that coffin, which was then sealed up, and we found it, as now, empty. We then waited and saw something white come through the trees. The next day we came here in daytime, as she lay there. Did she not, friend John?" "Yes." "That night we were just in time. One more so small child was missing, and we found it, thank God, unharmed amongst the graves. Yesterday I came here before sundown, for at sundown the undead can move. I waited here all night till the sun rose, but I saw nothing. It was most probable that it was because I had laid over the clamps of these doors with garlic, which the undead can't bear, and other things which they shun. Last night there was no exodus, so tonight, before sundown, I took away my garlic and other things, and so it is we find this coffin empty. But bear with me. So far there is much that is strange. Wait with me outside, unseen and unheard, and things much stranger yet to be. So," here he shut the dark slide of his lantern. "Now, to the outside." He opened the door, and we filed out, he coming last and locking the door behind him. Oh, but it seemed fresh and pure in the night air after the terror of the vault. How sweet it was to see the clouds race by, and the passing gleams of the moonlight between the scudding clouds crossing and passing. like the gladness and sorrow of a man's life. How sweet my allergies it was to breathe the fresh air, that had no taint of death or decay. How humanizing to see the red lighting of the sky beyond the hill, and to hear far away the muffled roar that marks the life of a great city. Each, in his own way, was solemn and overcome. Arthur was silent, and was, I could see, striving to grasp the purpose and the inner meaning of the mystery. I was myself taught, very patient, and half inclined again to throw aside doubt and to accept Van Helsing's conclusions. Quincy Morris was phlegmatic in the way a man who accepts all things and accepts them in the spirit of cool bravery, with hazard of all he has to stake. Not being able to smoke, he cut himself a good-sized plug of tobacco and began to chew. As to Van Helsing, he was employed in a definite way. First, he took from his bag a mass of what looked like thin, wafer-like biscuit, and what looked like a thin, wafer-white biscuit, which was carefully rolled up in a white napkin. Next, he took out a double handful of some whitish stuff, like dough or putty. He crumbled the wafer up fine and worked it into the mass between his hands. This he then took, and rolling it into thin strips, began to lay them into the crevices between the door and his setting in the tomb. I was somewhat puzzled at this, and being close, asked him what it was that he was doing. Arthur and Quincy drew near also, as they too were curious. He answered, "I'm closing the tomb so that the undead can't enter." "And is that stuff you have put there going to do it?" asked Quincy. "Great Scott, is this a game?" "It is." "What is it that you're using?" This time the question was from Arthur. Van Helsing reverently lifted his hat as he answered, "The host. I brought it from Amsterdam. I have an indulgence." It was an answer that appalled the most skeptical of us, and we felt individually that in the presence of such earnest purpose of the professor's, a purpose which could thus use the to him most sacred of things, it was impossible to distrust. In respectful silence, we took the places assigned to us close round the tomb, but hidden from the sight of anyone approaching. I pitied the others, especially Arthur. I had myself been apprenticed by my former visits to this watching horror, and yet I, who had, up to an hour ago, repudiated the proofs, felt my heart sink with me. Never did tombs look so ghastly white. Never did cypress or yew or juniper seem the embodiment of funeral gloom. Never did tree or grass wave or rustle so ominously. Never did bough creak so mysteriously. And never did the faraway howling of dogs send such a woeful presage through the night. There was a long spell of silence, a big aching void, and then from the professor a keen "Sst." He pointed, and far down the avenue of yews we saw a white figure advance, a dim white figure, which held something dark at its breast. The figure stopped, and at the moment a ray of moonlight fell upon the fastness of driving clouds and showed in startling prominence a dark-haired woman, dressed in the cerements of the grave. We could not see the face, for it was bent down over what we saw to be a fair-haired child. There was a pause and a sharp little cry, such as a child gives in sleep, or a dog as it lies before the fire in dreams. We were starting forward, but the professor's warning hand, seen by us as he stood behind a yew tree, kept us back. And then, as we looked, the white figure moved forwards again. It was now near enough for us to see clearly, and the moonlight still held. My own heart grew cold as ice, and I could hear the gasp of Arthur as we recognized the features of Lucy. Lucy! But yet how changed! The sweetness was turned to heartless cruelty, and the purity to vulpurous wantonness. Van Helsing stepped out, and obedient to his gesture, we all advanced too. The four of us ranged in line before the door of the tomb. Van Helsing raised his lantern and drew the slide. By the concentrated light that fell on Lucy's face, we could see that the lips were crimson with fresh blood, and that the stream had trickled over her chin and stained the purity of her lawn death robe. We shuddered with horror. I could see by the tremulous light that even Van Helsing's iron nerve failed. Arthur was next to me, and if I had not seized his arm and held him up, he would have fallen. When Lucy, I called the thing that was before us Lucy, because it bore her shape, saw us, She drew back with an angry snarl, such as a cat gives when taken unawares. Then her eyes ranged over us. Lucy's eyes in form and color, but Lucy's eyes unclean and full of hellfire, instead of the pure gentle orbs we knew. At that moment, the remnant of my love passed into hate and loathing. Had she then to be killed? I could have done it with savage delight. As she looked, her eyes blazed with unholy light, and her face became wreathed with a voluptuous smile. Oh God, how it made me shudder to see it! With a careless motion, she flung to the ground, callous as a devil, the child that up to now she had clutched strenuously to her breast, growling over it as a dog growls over a bone. The child gave a sharp cry, and lay there moaning. There was a cold-bloodedness in the act groan, which wrung a groan from Arthur. When she advanced to him with outstretched arms and a wanton smile, he fell back and hid his face in his hands. She still advanced, however, and with a languorous, vulpurous grace said, "Come to me, Arthur. Leave these other and come to me. My arms are hungry for you. Come, and we can rest together. Come, my husband, come." There was something diabolically sweet in her tones, something of the tingling of glass when struck, which rang through the brains of even us, who heard the words addressed to another. As for Arthur, he seemed under a spell, moving his hands from his face. He opened wide his arms. She was leaping for them, when Van Helsing sprang forward and held between them his little golden crucifix. She recoiled from it, and with a suddenly distorted face full of rage, dashed past him as if to enter the tomb. When within a foot or two of the door, however, she stopped, as if arrested by some irresistible force. Then she turned, and her face was shown in the clear burst of moonlight, and by the lamp, which was now no quiver from Van Helsing's iron nerves. Never did I see such baffled malice on a face, and never, I trust, shall such ever be seen again by mortal eyes. The beautiful color became livid, the eyes seemed to throw out sparks of hellfire. The brows were wrinkled, as though the folds of the flesh were the coils of Medusa snakes, and the lovely blood-stained mouth grew to an open square, as if the passion mask of the Greeks and Japanese. If ever a face meant death, and looks could kill, we saw it at that moment. And so, for a full half a minute, which seemed an eternity, she remained between the lifted crucifix and the sacred closing of her means of entry. Van Helsing broke the silence by asking Arthur, "Answer me, O my friend, am I to proceed in my work?" Arthur threw himself on his knees and hid his face in his hands as he answered, "Do as you will, friend, do as you will. There can be no horror like this ever any more." And he groaned in spirit. Quincy and I together moved towards him and took his arms. We could hear the click of the closing lantern as Van Helsing held it down. Coming close to the tomb, he began to remove from the chinks some of the sacred emblem which he had placed there. We all looked on in horrified amazement as we saw when he stood back the woman, with a corporeal body as real at that moment as our own, pass and through the interstice where scarce a knife blade could have gone. We all felt a glad sense of relief when we saw the professor calmly restoring the strings of putty to the edge of the door. When this was done, he lifted the child and said, "Come now, my friends. We can do no more till tomorrow. There is a funeral at noon, so here we shall all come before long after that. The friends of the dead will all be gone by two, and when the sexton locked gate shall remain. Then there is more to do, but not like this tonight. As for this little one, he is not much harm, and by tomorrow night he shall be well. We shall leave him where the police will find him, as on the other night, and then to home." Coming close to Arthur, he said, "My friend Arthur, you have had a sore trial, but after, when you look back, you'll see how it was necessary. You are now in the bitter waters, my child. By this time tomorrow you will, please God, have passed them, and have drunk of the sweet waters. So do not mourn over much. Till then, I shall not ask you to forgive me." Arthur and Quincy came home with me, and we tried to cheer each other on the way. We had left the child in safety and were tired, so we all slept with more or less reality of sleep. 29 September, night. A little before 12 o'clock, we three, Arthur Quincy Morris and myself, called for the professor. It was odd to notice that by common consent we had all put on black clothes. Of course, Arthur wore black, for he was indeed mourning, but the rest of us wore it by instinct. We got to the churchyard by 1:30 and strolled about, keeping out of official observation, so that when the gravediggers had completed their tasks and the sexton, under the belief that everyone had gone, had locked the gate, we had the place all to ourselves. Van Helsing, instead of his little black bag, had with him a long leather one, something like a cricketing bag. It was manifestly a fair weight. When we were alone, and had heard the last of the footsteps die out of the road, we silently, and as if by the intention, followed the professor to the tomb. He unlocked the door, and we entered, closing it behind us. Then he took from his bag the lantern, which he lit, and also 2 wax candles, which, when lighted, he stuck, by melting their own ends, on other coffins, so that they might give light sufficient to work by. When he again lifted the lid off Lucy's coffin, we all looked, Arthur trembling like an aspen, and saw that the body lay there in all its death beauty. But there was no love in my own heart. Nothing but loathing for the foul thing which had taken Lucy's shape without her soul. I could see even Arthur's face grow hard as he looked. Presently he said to Van Helsing, "Is this really Lucy's body, or only a demon in her shape? It is her body, and yet not her body. But wait a while, and you'll all see her as she was and is." She seemed like a nightmare of Lucy as she lay there. The pointed teeth, the blood-stained vulpurous mouth, which made one shudder to see. The whole carnal and unspiritual appearance seeming like a devilish mockery of Lucy's sweet purity. Van Helsing, with his usual methodical self, began taking the various contents from his bag and placing them ready for use. First he took out a soldering iron and some plumbing solder, and then a small oil lamp, which gave out, when lit in a corner of the tomb, gas which burned at fierce heat with a blue flame. Then his operating knives, which he placed to hand, and last a round wooden stake, some 2.5 or 3 inches thick, and about 3 feet long. One end of it was hardened by charring in the fire, and was sharpened to a fine point. With this stake came a heavy hammer, such as in households is used in the coal cellar for breaking the lumps. To me, a doctor's preparations for work of any kind are stimulating and bracing. But the effect of these things on both Arthur and Quincy was to cause them a sort of consternation. They both, however, kept their courage and remained silent and quiet. When all was ready, Van Helsing said, "Before we do anything, let me tell you this. It is out of the lore and experience of the ancients and of all those who have studied the powers of the undead. When they become such, there comes with the change the curse of immortality. They cannot die, but must go on, age after age, adding new victims and multiplying the evils of the world. For all that die from the preying of the undead becomes themselves undead and prey on their kind. And so the circle goes on, ever widening, like as the ripples from a stone thrown in the water. Friend Arthur, if you had met that kiss, which you know of before poor Lucy died, or again, last night, when you opened your arms to her, you would in time, when you had died, have become Nosferatu, as they call it in Eastern Europe, and would all time make more of those undeads. But your lady is but just begun. Those children whose blood she sucked are not, as yet, so much the worse. But if she live on, the undead, more and more, they lose their blood, and by her power over them, they come to her. And so she draw their blood with that so wicked mouth. But if she die in truth, then all cease. The tiny wounds of the throats disappear, and they go back to their plays unknowing ever what has been. But of the most blessed of all, when this now undead has been made to rest as true dead, then the soul of the poor lady, whom we shall love again, be free. Instead of working wickedness by night and growing more debased in the assimilating of it by day, she shall take her place with the other angels. So that, my friend, it will be a blessed hand for her that shall strike the blow that sets her free. To this I am willing. But is there none amongst us who has a better right? Will it be no joy to think of hereafter in the silence of the night, when sleep is not? It was my hand that sent her to the stars. It was the hand of him that loved her best, the hand that of old she would hear herself have chosen. Had it been to her to choose, tell me if there's such one among us. We all looked at Arthur. He saw, too, what we all did. The infinite kindness which suggested that his should be the hand which would restore Lucy to us as a holy and not an unholy memory. He stepped forward and said bravely, though his hand trembled and his face was as pale as snow, "My true friend, from the bottom of my broken heart, I thank you. Tell me what I am to do, and I shall not falter." Van Helsing laid a hand on his shoulder and said, "Brave lad, a moment's courage, and it is done. This stake must be driven through her. It will be a fearful ordeal. Be not deceived in that, but it will be only a short time, and you will then rejoice more than your pain was great. From this grim tomb you will emerge, as though you tread on air, but you must not falter when once you have begun. Only think that we, your true friends, are round you, and that we pray for you the whole time." "Go on," said Arthur hoarsely. "Tell me what I am to do." "Take this stake in your left hand, ready to place the point over the heart, and the hammer in your right. Then, when we begin our prayer for the dead, I shall read him. I have here the book, and the others shall follow, striking in God's name, that so all may be well with the dead, that we love, and the undead pass away." Arthur took the stake and the hammer, and when once his mind was set on the action, his hands never trembled nor quivered. Van Helsing opened his missal and began to read, and Quincy and I followed as best as we could. Arthur placed the point over the heart, and as I looked, I could see its dint in the white flesh. Then he struck with all his might. The thing in the coffin writhed, and a hideous blood-curdling screech came from the opened red lips. The body shook and quivered and twisted in wild contortions. The sharp white teeth clamped together till the lips were cut, and the mouth was smeared with a crimson foam. But Arthur never faltered. He looked like a figure of Thor, as his untrembling arm rose and fell, driving deeper and deeper the mercy-bearing stake, whilst the blood from the pierced heart welled and spurted up around it. His face was set, and high duty seemed to shine through it. The sight of it gave us courage, so that our voices seemed to ring through the little vault. And then the writhing and quivering of the body became less, and the teeth seemed to champ, and the face to quiver. Finally it lay still. The terrible task was over. The hammer fell from Arthur's hand. He reeled, and would have fallen had we not caught him. The great drops of sweat sprang from his forehead, and his breath came in broken gasps. It had indeed been an awful strain on him, and had he not been forced to his task by more than human considerations, he could never have gone through with it. For a few minutes we were so taken up with him that we didn't look towards the coffin. When we did, however, a murmur of startled surprise ran from one to the other of us. We gazed so eagerly that Arthur rose, for he had been seated on the ground, and came and looked too. And then a glad, strange light broke over his face, and dispelled altogether the gloom of the horror that lay upon it. There, in the coffin, lay no longer the foul thing that we had so dreaded and grown to hate, that the work of her destruction was yielded as a privilege to the one best entitled to it, but Lucy, as we had seen her in her life, with her face of unequal sweetness and purity. True, that there were there, as we had seen them in life, the traces of care and pain and waste. But these were all dear to us, for they marked her truth to what we knew now. One and all we had felt that the holy calm that lay like sunshine over the wasted face and form was only an earthly token and symbol of the calm that was to reign forever. Van Helsing came and laid his hand on Arthur's shoulder, and said to him, "And now, Arthur, my friend, dear lad, am I not forgiven?" The reaction of the terrible strain came as he took the old man's hand in his, and raising it to his lips, pressed it, and said, "Forgiven, God bless you, that you may have given my dear one her soul again, and be peace." He put his hands on the professor's shoulder, and laying his head on his breast, cried for a while silently, whilst we stood unmoving. When he raised his head, Van Helsing said to him, And now, my child, you may kiss her. Kiss her dead lips, if you will. And do it as she would have you to, if for her to choose. For she is not a grinning devil now, not any more a foul thing, for all eternity. No longer is she the devil's undead. She is God's true dead, whose soul is with him. Arthur bent and kissed her, and then we sent him and Quincy out of the tomb. The professor and I sawed the top off the stake, leaving the point of it in the body. Then we cut off the head and filled the mouth with garlic. We soldered up to the leaden coffin, screwed on the coffin lid, and gathering up our belongings, came away. When the professor locked the door, he gave the key to Arthur. Outside, the air was sweet, the sun shone, and the birds sang, and it seemed as if all nature were tuned to a different pitch. There was gladness and mirth and peace everywhere, for we were at rest ourselves on one account, and we were glad, though it was with a temper of joy. Before we moved away, Van Helsing said, "Now, my friends, one step of our work is done, one of the most harrowing to ourselves. But there remains a greater task, to find out the author of all this, our sorrow, and to stamp him out. I have clues which we can follow, but it is a long task, and it is difficult, and there is danger in it, and pain. Shall you not all help me? We have learned to believe all of this. Is it not so? And since do we not see our duty? Yes. And do we not promise to go on to the bitter end?" Each in turn, we took his hand, and the promise was made. Then said the professor as we moved off, "2 nights hence, you shall meet with me and dine together at 7 o'clock with friend John. I shall entreat 2 others, 2 that you know not as yet, and I shall be ready to all our work show and our plans unfold. Friend John, you come with me home, for I have much to consult about, and you can help me. Tonight I leave for Amsterdam, but shall return tomorrow night. And then begins our great quest. But first, I shall have much to say, so that you may know what is to do and to dread. Then our promise shall be made to each other anew. For there is a terrible task before us, and once our feet are on the plowshare, we must not draw back." Hang on a second, TikTok. Okay. Seriously, TikTok. Hang on 1 second. Okay. Okay, that is it. And this thing just flipped the page. There we go. Okay, let's see if I can mark my page here. Alright, guys, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Be nice not to be blind, but okay. Off we go. Alright, everybody, thank you for coming tonight. I really appreciate it. Again, on TikTok, thank you. Double tap that screen if you like what you saw tonight. I don't read every night. It's usually Sunday nights and nights that so sometimes my guests are ill and can't make the show or whatever. Check us out every day, Monday through Friday, 6:30 p.m. Pacific at youtube.com/at California Haunts Radio, where we not only talk about vampires, but other paranormal stuff as well. Okay? Thank you, TikTok, for coming. I really appreciate it. And if you like the show, be sure to share it with people that you know. Alrighty, I will see you guys soon. Bye-bye. Okay, there you all are. Welcome. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed this reading as much as I did. Had a lot of fun, and really excited to be able to do that for you. I want to thank you all for coming tonight. I appreciate it, and we'll see you guys tomorrow, 6:30 p.m. Pacific. Our guest is Jay Wiedner, and we're going to be talking about the Zapruder, the JFK Zapruder film, and Apollo moon landing films. He has some interesting stuff to tell us about those conspiracies, but I'm eager to hear what he has to say about it. So I want to thank you all for coming tonight. I appreciate it. If you like the show, share it with 5 people. If you hate the show, share it with 5 of your enemies. Equal opportunity here at California Haunts Radio. Okay, guys, I'm going to call it a night. It's been a while, and I will see you tomorrow, 6:30 p.m. Pacific. Bye.